Soldier, welcome to a new training program brought to you by Jade Cove Broadcast Services. This program is designed for basic training and provides an introduction to the world of armor. In this series of films, you'll learn to visually identify the different armored units that you'll come across on the battlefield and understand the mechanics which are the key to victory on the battlefield. Tanks are powerful assets in the heat of battle, capable of turning a situation around quickly if used correctly. That is why it is essential to be able to communicate the arrival of a tank to your allies, whether friendly or enemy. There are many different types of tanks on the battlefield. Small, medium, and very, very large ones, all with their own strength and weaknesses. By the end of this course, you'll be able to identify a tank by its silhouette in the blink of an eye, and effectively communicate its presence to your teammates. First things first, a few general points. All tanks are based on the same operating principle, with a few exceptions that we'll take a look at later. An individual armored unit is commonly referred to as a tank. It consists of a more or less armored chassis, a turret fitted with a cannon, tracks, and an engine. In a tank, each of the above elements is called a subsystem. This notion of subsystem is important. All of them can be damaged, which will impair the performance of the tank affected by such damage. Each subsystem can fail. If the tank's turret is damaged, it will no longer be able to rotate and firing will be impossible. Black smoke will be visible from the tank. The tank is called turreted. If the tank's tracks are damaged, its ability to move will be severely affected. It may even be unable to climb certain slopes. If the tracks are damaged in this way, the tank will shake as it moves. In this case, the tank is tracked. If the fuel tank is punctured, the fuel will flow out of the tank, forming large black puddles behind it. If the tank cannot retreat to safety before it's empty, it will become immobilized. The tank is said leaking. There is a fourth subsystem which can be partially or completely deactivated: the armor. When all armor points have been consumed, the tank will be unable to deflect incoming fire. Thanks to its armor, there are two types of shots a tank can sustain: penetrating shots, known as hits, and shots that ricochet off the armor, known as bounces or ricochet. The determining factor is the condition of your armor. The newer the armor, the more likely it is to ricochet without damaging the tank and its armor. Armor points are consumed when a penetrating shot is received. Once the shell has penetrated, it will damage the armor, the integrity of the tank, and potentially damage one of the above-mentioned subsystems if directly hit. To finish off with some general information, there are four main types of tank: anti-infantry, anti-structure, anti-tank, and the last one, which we'll call multi-purpose. And now, to help you recognize them, we're going to introduce you to the four main tanks of each of the two factions. The light tanks, commonly abbreviated LT, are basic tanks, virtually identical for Wardens and Colonials alike. The Wardens have the Devitt Mark III, while the Colonial have the H5 Hatchet. Both are a small tank with a crew of 3 and equipped with a 40mm gun turret. These tanks represent the principle of the armored vehicle in its most simple form. They are a must for any aspiring tanker. The crew consists of a driver, a gunner, and an observer, also known as the tank commander. The main differences between a Devitt and a Hatchet are slightly better armor for the former and a slightly lower price for the latter. These tanks are the basis for a wide range of variants, which we'll quickly list here. We will delve deeper into them in a separate film. The hatchet can be modified into the H8 Kreneska, a tank capable of overloading its engine to benefit from a speed boost. The H19 Vulcan, where the 40mm cannon has been replaced by a flamethrower. The H10 Pelekis. This variant is often called Light Tank Destroyer and uses a 68mm gun. On the Warden's side, the Devitt Mark III has the following variants. The Devitt Kane Mark IV MMR, also known as Mortar Light Tank, which turret has been modified to fire mortar shells. The Devitt Ironhide Mark IV, a version with improved armor. Medium tanks. The medium tank category is special in the sense that it includes both assault tanks and cruiser tanks. The medium tank is also the category which regroups the most tanks for both factions. On the colonial side we find the 85B Falchion, the most representative contender in this category, as it is particularly average in every aspect, and is merely an improvement of a light tank on paper. Apart from the fact that it can be produced in crates of 5 tanks, unlike all others, which are only produced in crates of 3, with no extra cost for the 2 extra tanks, making it a particularly cheap tank. The Falchion can be modified into the 85KA Spatha, which features a 40mm high-velocity cannon for greater damage and slightly improved armor. The Falchion can also be modified into the 85VG Talos. This tank fires 75mm shells at a range of 35 meters only, and at the cost of reduced speed due to its heavier weight. On the Warden side, we find the Gallagher Outlaw Mark II and its variant. This is a particularly expensive tank, but it has a 40mm gun turret capable of firing at a distance of 45 meters. Its engine has a boost shared by all its variants, making it a particularly mobile platform, but ill-suited for pitched battles due to its low armor. The Outlaw has room for a 4th crew member to operate a 7.92mm hull-mounted machine gun, unlike its variants. The Gallagher can be upgraded to a Gallagher Highwayman Mark III, where the 40mm gun has been replaced by a double 20mm cannon with a 35-meter range. In addition, a 12.7mm machine gun rests in the tank commander's cupola. The last variant of the Outlaw is the Gallagher Thornfall Mark IV. This time the main gun is replaced by a dual 7.92mm machine gun, and the tank commander controls 8 arc RPG tubes coaxial with the turret, firing the same ammunition as the Bonesaw, but with a range of 30 meters. These 3 tanks have very specific doctrines of use and are not to be placed in everyone's hands, but we'll come back to how to use them in another film. The last tank in this category is a Warden tank called the Silverhand Mark IV. This is a tank with 4 crew members, as it houses 2 weapons, a turret with a 40mm gun of 40-meter range, as well as a hull-mounted 68mm gun with a 35-meter range. There are 2 variants of this tank, first of which is the Silverhand Chieftain Mark VI, a so-called siege tank because the hull gun has been replaced by a 250mm howitzer, while the 40mm gun has been replaced by a double 12.7mm machine gun. The last variant is the Silverhand Lord Scar Mark X. It features a 94.5mm hull-mounted gun, capable of firing up to 40 meters. This tank has a crew of 4 with an engineer dedicated to reloading the gun, a role also found inside the Colonial Talos tank. Finally, let's talk about the heavy tank category. In this category, we find the Noble Widow Mark XIV, also known as Heavy Tank Destroyer, which features heavy armor and a high-velocity 68mm cannon with a 40-meter range. It can be modified into the Noble Firebrand Mark 17, which 68mm barrel has been replaced by a powerful flamethrower. The colonial opponent to the Noble Widow is the 86KA Bardiche, which is based on the opposite principle. Short barrel 68mm cannon with a range of 35 meters. It is a heavy tank remarkable for its speed, very good armor and durability, in which turret also houses a coaxial 12.7 machine gun. This tank can be modified into the 86K C Rancer, where the 68mm cannon has been replaced by a 12.7mm machine gun with coaxial RPG tubes fitted to the turret. We took a quick tour of the main tanks and their variations. Now you should remember their capabilities and how to distinguish them. We will go into more detail about each type of tank and their use in future instruction films. In this next series, we will also cover field guns, battle tanks, and armored cars. In the meantime, stay tuned with us on Jade Cove Broadcast Services.